The Whitcomb Estate was unusually silent that morning, the kind of silence that felt heavy enough to press against the walls. Sunlight slipped through tall windows in soft, pale bands, illuminating the polished marble floors where Maria walked with steady, disciplined steps. She had cleaned many wealthy homes before, but this mansion carried a strange stillness, as if the rooms themselves were holding their breath. Maria reached the third-floor west wing, a part of the house no one ever talked about but insisted be kept spotless. As she pulled a heavy antique bureau away from the wall to vacuum behind it, the floor suddenly dipped beneath her foot. She paused, frowning. This wasn't the wobble of old wood, this felt deliberate, as if something was built beneath. She crouched down and brushed away dust. That's when she saw it, a thin, perfect seam carved into the floorboards, too precise to be natural. Her heartbeat quickened as she slid a flat screwdriver into the line and gently pressed. A soft click echoed under her hand. The board lifted. Cold, stale air drifted upward from a narrow, hidden stairway leading into darkness. Maria stared down, her breath trembling, realizing she had stumbled upon something someone had intentionally buried within this wealthy, quiet home. But before we go further, you might be wondering, what exactly is down there in that hidden room? Why was it sealed away? And will Maria's discovery uncover danger, or a truth this mansion has guarded for years? All of these answers are coming in the story ahead, so stay with us. And if you love emotional stories like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more. Maria Alvarez had been working at the Whitcomb Estate for nearly 3 years, long enough to understand its rhythms the way a sailor understands the sea. She knew which doors creaked, which windows stuck in winter, and which hallways echoed the loudest when Emma Whitcomb ran through them laughing. But beneath all the routines and luxury, Maria sensed something deeper and unspoken heaviness that seemed to press into the very walls of the house. Her own life was simple, stitched together by discipline and sacrifice. Maria lived in a one-room apartment above a noisy bakery, paying rent that always seemed to rise faster than her wages. Every month, she mailed part of her earnings back home to her mother in Mexico, who still believed her daughter lived a glamorous life working for the rich. Maria never corrected her. Some truths felt kinder unspoken. Despite the hardships, Maria carried a strength carved from years of making do. She found comfort in small things: a used novel from the free library stand, a bowl of her mother's favorite soup recipe, the warm chatter of neighbors who treated her like family. She believed kindness quiet, consistent kindness could soften even the worst days. The Whitcomb family lived differently. David Whitcomb, the CEO of Whitcomb Financial, walked through the world with shoulders tense from carrying responsibilities money could not fix. He had lost his wife 3 years earlier, and grief clung to him like a second skin. His daughter, Emma, 7 years old, had a gentle spirit and an unusually quiet way of observing the world. She spoke softly, clung to her toy horses, and often seemed to drift into her own private universe. Maria had always felt protective of Emma. She saw pieces of her own childhood in the girl's sensitivity, imagination, and a longing to be understood. But she also sensed something else, a loneliness that didn't match the wealth of the home she lived in. Emma often wandered alone, drawing patterns in the dust or arranging her toys in perfect rows, as if building tiny worlds where she felt safe. Maria never imagined that loneliness came from something literally hidden beneath their feet. For the rest of the morning, Maria tried to focus on her work, but the hidden stairway haunted her thoughts like an echo she couldn't shake. Every time she moved her mop or dusted a shelf, her eyes flicked toward the west wing, imagining the darkness she had uncovered. She told herself to stay professional, to finish her duties, and forget the strange discovery. But her curiosity pulsed beneath her ribs like a second heartbeat. By noon, she gave in. She returned to the seam in the floor, her fingers trembling slightly as she lifted the board again. The cool air drifted up, brushing her face as if welcoming her back. She descended slowly this time, one cautious step at a time, letting her hand trail along the wall for balance. When she reached the bottom, the dim room unfolded before her like a forgotten memory. It was larger than she had realized, a small chamber carved into the bones of the house. Dust motes swirled in the weak light from a high, narrow window. Against one wall stood a tiny metal bed frame with a patchwork quilt folded neatly on top. A row of dolls, missing buttons, some worn at the seam set, lined up as if waiting to be chosen. On a low shelf lay children's drawings, their edges curled with age. Stick figures, flowers, horses, all drawn in the same careful hand. Maria's throat tightened. This wasn't storage. This was someone's bedroom. She moved slowly, scanning every detail. A small wooden box sat beside the bed, filled with tiny belongings, hair ties. A chipped ceramic rabbit, a rubber bracelet, pink with fading glitter. On the floor near the dresser, she spotted two little sneakers placed side by side, the laces tied neatly as if a child had expected to wear them again. When she picked up one of the shoes, a piece of folded paper slid out from the inside. Her heart dropped as she opened it. Emma Whitcomb, hidden until safe. The scribbling was hurried, shaky, written with fear rather than love. Maria stared at the note until the words blurred. She knew Emma sweet, gentle Emma, who now played upstairs in the sunlight. Why would anyone hide her down here? Who was supposed to keep her safe? And safe from what? A sound upstairs broke her tranceless, distant chatter of house staff returning from lunch. Maria folded the note quickly and tucked it into her apron. She turned once more toward the small hidden room, her stomach twisted with dread and disbelief. She climbed back up the stairs, feeling as though she had stepped into a secret no one wanted discovered. But the truth was awake now, and Maria couldn't unsee it. Maria returned to her cleaning duties, but nothing felt the same after discovering the secret room. Every sweep of her cloth, every step across the polished floors carried the heavy weight of the folded note in her apron pocket. She replayed the words again and again. Emma Whitcomb, hidden until safe. The message gnawed at her, sharp and relentless, refusing to be pushed aside. She watched Emma more carefully in the days that followed. The little girl moved like someone who had learned to make herself small in large spaces. She rarely spoke unless spoken to. She spent hours arranging her toy horses in perfect, silent rows, as if order gave her comfort in a world that often felt unpredictable. And at times, when she thought no one was watching, Maria noticed Emma touch her fingers lightly to her temples, an anxious little gesture that made Maria's heart tighten with worry. One afternoon, while tidying the conservatory, Maria heard soft sobbing coming from behind a row of tall indoor plants. She approached quietly, her steps instinctively gentle. There, tucked against the glass wall, Emma sat curled in on herself, clutching a piece of paper crumpled tightly in her hand. Maria knelt beside her. "Sweetheart," she whispered, keeping her voice soft. "Are you hurt?" Emma shook her head but didn't speak. Tears clung to her lashes, trembling with each breath. Slowly, she extended the paper toward Maria, as if offering something fragile and dangerous. It was a child's letter, written in uneven, shaky handwriting. Only 2 words were clear. "Do not tell." Maria felt her stomach drop. "Who wrote this?" she asked gently, but Emma only pressed her lips together, staring at her toy horse lying nearby. The child's silence did not feel stubborn. It felt fearful. That night, Maria couldn't sleep. She lay awake in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling as sounds from the bakery below drifted upward, the clatter of pans, the hum of late-night ovens. She turned thoughts over like stones: a hidden room, a frightened child, a father drowning in work, and a note warning secrecy. It felt like holding a puzzle with the edges burned off, every piece jagged, incomplete. The next morning at the mansion, Maria made a decision that frightened her even as she made it. She would return to the hidden room again, but this time not out of curiosity, out of necessity. She waited until the household settled into its afternoon quiet. The cooks were busy preparing dinner. The gardener was in the greenhouse, and Mr. Whitcomb had locked himself in his office for a conference call. When Maria slipped into the west wing, her heart beat fast enough to echo in her ears. She opened the floorboard carefully and descended the steps. The air was colder today, as though the room sensed her intention. She examined everything with new eyes, searching for context, for meaning. She sifted through the drawings' childlike scribbles, all featuring small girls inside large houses or behind closed doors. She found a second note, half buried beneath a stack of old picture books. It read, "Not ready to leave. Keep secret." Beneath it was a date 3 years old. 3 years ago. That was when Emma's mother had passed away. Maria's chest tightened as a chilling realization settled over her. This was not just a hidden room. This was a place of refuge, possibly a place of fear. And Emma, who was only 7 now, must have lived here when she was even younger. A soft sound above startled Maria's faint footstep, followed by another. Someone else was in the west wing. She quickly climbed the stairs, replaced the floorboard, and stepped into the hallway just as David Whitcomb turned the corner. His eyes swept over her, sharp and questioning. "Maria?" he asked, voice low. "What are you doing here?" Maria's heart hammered, but she forced a steady breath. "Sir, there is something I need to show you." David's expression shifted confusion, then caution, and finally something like dread. He followed her into the hallway. Maria knew there was no turning back now. The truth she had uncovered was no longer just her burden. It was time for someone else to face it too. David followed Maria into the quiet hallway of the west wing, his steps slow and reluctant, as if he sensed the weight of what was coming. The house around them felt unusually still, the kind of stillness that settles before a truth breaks open. When they reached the spot where the floorboard hid the secret stairway, Maria paused, gathering steadiness from a long breath. She looked up at David, searching his face for something: permission, maybe, or courage. "Sir," she said softly, "there's something underneath this floor. Something you need to see." For a moment, David's expression didn't change. Then a subtle shift crossed his features, first confusion, then surprise, and finally a flicker of fear. He nodded once, stiffly. "Show me." Maria knelt and pressed at the seam until the board clicked open. Cold air rose like a breath from the past. David stared down into the darkness, his jaw tightening. Without waiting, he descended first, his shoulders hunched as though bracing himself against ghosts. When he reached the bottom, he stopped abruptly. Maria followed, holding a lantern that cast shadows against the walls. David stood frozen, looking around the small hidden room with eyes that glistened at the edges. "This?" he whispered. His voice cracked on the word. Maria stepped closer, her heart aching at the rawness in his face. "Mr. Whitcomb, is this Emma's room?" David swallowed hard. His hands trembled as he picked up the tiny shoe lying near the bed. "I haven't been down here in years," he murmured. "My wife. She made this space when Emma was little. It was meant to be temporary, a safe room. We were being followed, photographed, threatened by reporters. Someone even tried to force their way in once when my wife was alone with the baby." He rubbed his thumb over the small sneaker, his voice breaking. She panicked. "She hid Emma down here for hours until help arrived." Maria kept silent, letting him speak. As time went on, he continued, voice dropping. "She insisted Emma stay down here whenever things got bad outside. She believed it protected her." He exhaled, shakily. "After my wife passed away, I didn't have the strength to face this place. I thought leaving it untouched was honoring her memory." Maria's eyes softened. "But Emma, she's still hurting, sir." David finally met her gaze, full of guilt, grief, and a dawning understanding he could no longer turn away from. In that moment, he broke not in weakness, but in revelation. "I didn't realize," he whispered. "I thought secrecy was safety. but I didn't see the damage it was doing. He closed his eyes, holding the tiny shoe as though it were the key to all his failures. And that was the moment everything changed. The next morning, the Whitcomb Estate felt different, not in its structure, but in its atmosphere. The air no longer carried that tight, unspoken tension. Instead, there was a faint hum, a sense of something shifting, something opening. David Whitcomb rose earlier than usual, not to answer emails or prepare for meetings, but with one clear purpose: to begin repairing what he had unknowingly damaged. He found Emma in the playroom, sitting cross-legged on the floor, arranging her toy horses in perfect, color-coordinated rows. The morning light softened her features, and for a moment David simply watched her, realizing how many moments like this he had missed. Taking a steady breath, he walked toward her and knelt down. "Emma," he said gently, "can I sit with you?" The child looked up, startled, as if unsure whether he truly meant it. But after a long pause, she nodded and moved one of the toy horses closer to him. David's throat tightened at the small gesture. It was the first invitation she had offered him in months. He didn't force conversation. He didn't ask her to perform or explain. He simply sat, letting her world unfold at its own rhythm. With time, she began to speak softly about her horses, their names, their stories. And David really listened for the first time since she was little. That afternoon, he called a child therapist recommended by the family doctor and scheduled an evaluation. He wanted Emma to have a chance to heal, to speak safely, to be understood. He also instructed the staff to open the curtains in every room, letting sunlight warm the house again. The mansion, once dim and guarded, brightened visibly over the next few days. Maria noticed Emma changing too. She began exploring rooms she had once avoided. She painted in the conservatory, her small fingers dipping into bright colors with excitement. She lingered in the kitchen, chatting quietly with the cooks. Even her footsteps grew a little louder, a little freer, echoing down hallways that had once swallowed sound. David, moved by Maria's courage and honesty, offered her a new position not just as a maid, but as Emma's personal caretaker and companion. The raise was significant, but more importantly, it gave Maria the dignity of being recognized for the heart she had poured into the family. The hidden room in the West Wing was cleaned out slowly, respectfully. Its quilts were washed and donated. Its toys went to children's shelters. The room itself was locked, not as a secret, but as a reminder of a past they all agreed to leave behind. And for the first time in years, the Whitcomb Estate felt like a home again, warm, lived in, and full of healing light. Weeks passed, and the transformation within the Whitcomb Estate became impossible to ignore. Laughter, small at first, like a shy guest, began to settle into the corners of the home. Emma no longer walked like a shadow. She moved with a gentle confidence, as if she had finally stepped into the sunlight she had always deserved. And Maria, who had simply followed her conscience, found herself woven into the family's daily life in a way she never expected. One afternoon, as Maria finished organizing art supplies in the conservatory, Emma approached her quietly. In her hands was a drawing, two figures holding hands beneath a bright yellow sun, one tall, one small, both smiling. At the bottom, in uneven letters, Emma had written, "My safe person." Maria pressed the drawing to her heart, her eyes stinging with emotion. She understood then that the real secret of the mansion was never the hidden roomette, was the silent hurt of a child who only needed to be seen. And sometimes the bravest thing anyone can do is open a door that everyone else pretends isn't there. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who believes every child deserves safety, compassion, and a voice. And remember, kindness doesn't need wealth. It needs awareness.